There was a man who worked nights on the 24th floor. Nobody ever saw him arrive. His name was Leon Dorsey, and he moved like he knew how to go invisible, mop in one hand, walkie clipped to his belt, badge worn low. Just a grey shirt, grey gloves and silence. Every morning before the sun reached the loop, the offices sparkled and the trash bins were lined just right. That was how you knew Leon had passed through. But ask around. Maintenance guy, I think. Older. Don't. Know his name. Real quiet. Wears those orthopedic shoes. Isn't he just a contractor? No one knew he had once built circuit boards by hand, that he'd lost his house during the crash of '08, that his son had died in uniform overseas, that he read one book a week and annotated the margins in perfect cursive. No one knew because no one asked. The building was a beacon of sleek success. Glass whiteboards, ping-pong tables, kombucha on tap. Interns with AirPods and six-figure engineers passed him like he was part of the wall except one person. Maria Kim, executive assistant to the CEO, had once come in early to prep for a board meeting and found Leon polishing the brass handles by hand. He'd looked up, surprised. She'd offered him a warm, "Good morning." He nodded. But something in the way he straightened his spine after made her feel it mattered. From then on, she always said hello. Sometimes she brought an extra coffee. And once, when she saw him scribbling in a spiral-bound notebook on break, she asked what he was writing. He just smiled and closed the cover. Then came the announcement, the annual Elevate conference, where all divisions showcased innovation and culture, was going fully in-house this year. The CEO, Bradford Minton, tall, tanned, always flanked by two assistants, had an idea, a new tradition. Someone from each department, no matter the role, would give a 3-minute talk on what leadership means to them. It was supposed to be inclusive, but behind the scenes, marketing quietly chose their rising star. Product selected a Stanford alum. HR picked someone who just made partner facilities. Well, the facilities head, a sharp-jawed man named Quinn, forgot to submit a name until the last minute. In a panic, he slapped down Leon's badge info, figuring it wouldn't matter. Let's have the janitor say something short. Diversity. Points, he joked. Leon was handed a lanyard 3 days before the event. No one asked if he wanted it. No one gave him a mic check. They just said, "You're up second. Keep it brief." The night before the Elevate conference, the glass hallways glowed blue with LED lights. Leon pushed his cart slowly past the empty main stage. He stopped, looked up at the podium, touched the edge with his glove. Then he walked to the janitor's closet, locked the door, and pulled out a second notebook worn at the edges, filled with sentences written and rewritten. He had been preparing for this day for 20 years, not to speak, to be heard. Maria spotted him before the others did. The corporate theater had been converted from the top-floor auditorium, LED screens alive with motion graphics, staff bustling, with clipboards, interns running cords under rows of white plastic chairs. They had folded away the janitor signs for the day, covered the scuffed service doors with navy blue drapes. It was Elevate conference morning, and the air smelled like pastries, nerves, and fresh printouts. Leon stood near the back, quietly, clutching his laminated name badge. It just read, Leon Dorsey, Operations. Nobody approached him. On stage, a young woman from HR finished her polished speech about leading with empathy, her words crisp, her voice coached. She received firm applause from the executive row. Then someone whispered near the mic, "Facilities is next." Leon didn't move right away. He adjusted his collar, smoothed the front of his shirt. His shoes, old orthopedic ones, black soles dulled, squeaked softly as he stepped toward the aisle. Quinn, the facilities head who'd volunteered him last minute, gave a tight, toothless nod as Leon passed by, like someone nodding at a busboy who'd just refilled his glass. Leon walked the steps slowly, one by one, not like a man used to standing in front of people, but like someone who had thought about this moment longer than anyone in that room ever. Wood the house lights dimmed. A hush passed through the crowd, more curiosity than respect. People leaned sideways, whispering. Phones slid up in laps to record. Some thought it was a mistake. Is that the janitor? Leon reached the podium. He looked down at the mic, then raised his eyes to the audience. You could hear the HVAC humming. You could hear the ice shift in a glass 3 rows back. Then finally, he spoke. I've worked here 12 years. You've probably seen me, maybe not noticed me. That's all right. My job's to leave no trace. Clean, clear, invisible. But leadership to me has nothing to do with titles. It's how you show up when no one's watching. Leadership is scrubbing vomit out of a conference chair before a board meeting, so the intern who spilled doesn't get blamed. It's picking up glass at 2 a.m. so someone's child doesn't get cut in the morning. It's showing up every night when your own heart is cracked open. Because someone out there depends on the lights being on and the floor being safe. Leadership is service, not for recognition, but because dignity doesn't need a spotlight. Thank you for letting me be part of this place. Silence, not the awkward kind, the kind that holds its breath. Maria stood in the back, hands clasped over her chest. A young intern looked down at his phone screen, still recording, then slowly lowered it, as if embarrassed. Even Bradford. Minton, the CEO, leaned forward, one hand at his chin, his eyes unreadable. And then, applause, not polite, not staged. Real, the kind that starts in one corner and rolls through the room like weather. People stood, hands clapped louder. Some people, who hadn't even looked up from their laptops earlier, now stood fully upright, necks craned. A few shouted his name. Leon gave a single graceful nod. He stepped down the stairs, ignoring the lights and stares, heading quietly for the service hallway. His shift would begin again in 30 minutes, but by the time he reached the elevator, the head of facilities was waiting, looking stunned. So was someone from PR. And then, behind them, the CEO himself. Bradford Minton walked up, hand extended. Leon, right? Leon hesitated, then shook it. Yes, sir. Janitor. 3rd shift. Bradford smiled slowly. Not anymore. The video hit 6,000 views by lunchtime. By 5 p.m., it had cracked 22,000. Mostly internal shares, passed through Teams and Slack threads like an office secret, too good not to tell. The subject line that made it spread fastest was simple. Did you see what the janitor said? But by the next morning, it had escaped the company firewall entirely. A viral leadership blog picked it up under the headline, "The best 172 words on leadership you'll hear all year from a night janitor in Chicago." Then came LinkedIn. Then Twitter. And by the time the local business journal called for comment, nobody was asking who Leon Dorsey was anymore. They were asking, where has this man been hiding? Maria stood outside Leon's usual hallway, the one behind the catering fridge, holding a fresh printout of the blog article. She knew he didn't go for digital stuff, not much. He still kept a flip phone with worn keys and wrote everything longhand. So she circled the headline in blue ink and left it taped to his locker door with a sticky note. Proud of you. You said what no one else ever could. Maria. But that night Leon didn't clock in, nor the next night. His cart stayed tucked, in the corner. His gloves were still hung neatly over the handle, and his shoes, the same pair he'd worn since the pandemic, sat beneath the bench, unmoved. The email came 3 days later. Subject: Leon Dorsey, follow-up, meeting request, Friday, 10 a.m. From Office of the CEO to Leon.Dorsey, Operations. The message was short, polite, and made it very clear that Bradford Minton wanted a private conversation. To explore new opportunities and perspectives you may be able to offer the leadership team. Leon showed up 10 minutes early. The boardroom smelled like wood polish and lavender. 12 leather chairs, 2 water carafes, and 1 digital screen flashing the words, Vision Refresh, Leadership from All Levels. Bradford was already inside, tie. Toff's sleeves rolled. His executive assistant nodded as Leon stepped in. "Thanks for coming," Bradford said, gesturing toward a chair. "I won't take much of your time." Leon sat. Slow. Careful. "I'll be honest with you," Bradford continued. "What you said last week, I've been thinking about it every morning since." Leon nodded once. No flattery, no awkward smile. Just patience. Bradford leaned forward. "Your speech reminded me of something I forgot. That buildings aren't made of brick and glass, they're made of people, and people like you hold the whole thing up." Leon blinked. Quiet. "So I have a proposal," Bradford said. "I want you on the internal leadership task force, not as a token, but as a truth-teller." Leon looked across the table. "You sure you want one of those?" Bradford actually laughed. "Apparently that's what we've been missing." 3 floors below, Quinn from Facilities read the company-wide announcement on his screen. "New addition to the Internal Culture and Ethics Task Force. Please join us in congratulating Leon Dorsey, our longtime third-shift operations team member, who has been invited to serve as a founding voice on the Elevate Leadership Council." Quinn blinked hard, then reread it. "Operations?" he muttered. "Are you kidding me?" Behind him, 2 junior techs exchanged a glance. One of them whispered, "Guess he's not invisible now." Meanwhile, Leon returned to his supply closet that night, not to clean, but to grab a worn notebook and a box of index cards. On the top card he wrote, Session 1, Listening Without Ego. You don't need a title to lead, just a reason. He tucked it into his coat pocket, shut the door behind him, and walked back toward the elevators. The conference room was quiet, except for the faint hum of overhead lights and the occasional shuffle of feet. A whiteboard had been rolled to the front. Coffee dispensers sat untouched along the side table. Most of the people seated around the rectangular table looked curious, if not mildly suspicious. The badge tags read titles like Senior Culture Strategist, Chief People Officer Lead, UX Evangelist Facilities Director, Quinn M. And then there was Leon Dorsey, Culture and Ethics Council, Community Rep in sharp black pen. It was the first Elevate Leadership Council session. Bradford, the CEO, had personally opened it with a 2-minute welcome before slipping out to let the group connect organically. That left 9 professionals, with curated resumes, and 1 former janitor in a quiet brown blazer, scribbling something on a note card. Quinn cleared his throat louder than necessary. So, Leon, he said, lips tugging into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What kind of perspective will you be bringing today? I assume you're still new to this sort of setting. Leon lifted his eyes slowly. I am, he said. But I've been watching this company longer than most people in this room. Difference is nobody ever asked what I saw before. Someone near the corner chuckled and then tried to hide it behind a sip of coffee. Leon stepped to the whiteboard. He uncapped a marker and wrote 2 words in block letters, Invisible Labor. Then he turned to the group, his voice calm, measured. There are people in this building who know when someone's kid is sick, who leaves the office crying on Tuesdays, who works late because they can't afford home internet, and who's taking food from the kitchen, home in napkins. You know how I know that? A pause. Because I cleaned their offices after they left. Silence. I've seen engineers work past midnight, and interns get shut out of rooms with ideas better than the team leads. I've watched 3 layoffs happen in 1 month, but still saw 10 new kegs brought in the next week. He stepped back. I don't have a degree in organizational development, but I know when something's broken, and it starts with not seeing the people who carry the weight of the place. The woman from HR, a mid-career professional with steel grey hair and a badge that read, Director Employee Wellness, leaned forward. "I think we should listen," she said. "Because honestly, I've heard more truth in the last 5 minutes than in most of our town halls." Quinn shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The session ran 20 minutes longer than scheduled, and when it ended, Leon walked out quietly as usual. But this time 2 others followed him. "Leon," said the woman from HR, "would you be open to co-hosting the next staff listening circle? I think your presence would really matter." Leon paused, then nodded. Behind them, one of the younger culture managers opened their phone and pulled up Slack. They typed a quick message. "Okay, this guy's the real deal, just wait till you hear him speak." Back in his apartment that night, a modest walk-up with a chipped porch and a window that stuck on humid days, Leon poured himself some tea and sat at his kitchen table. His jacket hung neatly over the chair. His badge was tucked in his pocket. He opened a new notebook page and wrote, "Day 1, seen, heard, still grounded. Next lesson, humility isn't weakness, it's strength under control." Then he folded the page and placed it in the stack. He wasn't collecting speeches, was building something. The pushback came quietly, but it came, not through confrontation, not through anything as honest as words to a man's face. It arrived through memos, subtle changes in tone, policy adjustments that smelled like polish and control. First, they streamlined the Elevate Leadership Council's meeting schedule from every week to bi-weekly. Then a new internal policy appeared about clearing all council presentations through corporate communications. Then Leon was informed that he would no longer be co-facilitating the next listening session. No explanation, just a shift in the agenda. Maria caught wind of it first. "They're freezing you out," she said, her voice low, worried, standing by the loading dock where Leon still sometimes took his breaks. "I've seen this before. It's how they silence without getting their hands dirty." Leon just nodded. He had seen it too, before the layoffs in 2010, before they replaced the night crew with contractors, before they pushed out the old warehouse, lead with a non-compete clause buried in a wellness contract. Still, it wasn't the cold shoulder that bothered him. It was the memo. On Friday, an internal doc leaked, titled Narrative Consistency Guidelines, Culture Engagement. One paragraph in particular stood out. "While stories of resilience and internal growth are welcome, we should avoid framing employees in operational roles as heroes unless pre-cleared for public communications. This prevents brand dilution and message inconsistency." Leon read it 3 times. "Brand dilution," he whispered. "Is that what I am?" That weekend, he sat at the public library near Halstead and Polk. A quiet table, a notebook open. The pages were almost full now. He flipped past his notes on trust building, ethics, silent leadership, past the quote from his son's last letter written in pencil. He reached a blank page and wrote in all caps, "Truth that makes them uncomfortable is still truth." Then, underneath, some stories are told to be heard. Others are told so no one can. Pretend they didn't know. The next Monday was the company's quarterly Leadership All Hands, a highly produced live stream with guest speakers, shout-outs, graphs, and carefully worded optimism. It was broadcast to 5 satellite offices, and every floor of the downtown HQ. Leon hadn't been invited, but Maria had. She sent him a calendar link with one note. "Please, say what you need to say. I'll handle the tech." That morning, Maria accessed the back-end queue of the livestream slideshow. She dropped in a new segment right after the CEO's closing remarks. She labeled it Operations Spotlight. When Bradford Minton walked off stage to polite applause, the screen behind him flickered, then showed a still image, Leon Dorsey, Culture and Ethics Council. Then the pre-recorded video began. Leon sat on a wooden stool, no script, wearing his old janitor badge and blazer. His voice filled every speaker on every floor. I was told not to frame operational staff as heroes, that our stories might confuse the brand, but I'm not here for branding. I'm here because truth without permission is still truth. So here's... Hasn't you want to know what leadership looks like in this building? It's the overnight staff who train each other because they don't get onboarding. It's the cafeteria workers who remember your allergies. It's the security guard who works a double so you can go home early. Leadership doesn't always wear a title. Sometimes it carries trash bags and memorizes names. You want to elevate something? Start there. Phones froze. Keyboards stopped clicking. In the room where Bradford stood, someone whispered, Did he just go live? No, Maria said, arms crossed. He recorded that last night, because he knew you'd try to cut him out. The applause started before the screen faded to black, but it didn't end when the lights came up. People stood, in lounges, in lunchrooms, even in the call center 2 states away. Some stood because they knew exactly who Leon was talking about, and others because they realized for the first time how little they'd noticed. That afternoon, Maria forwarded, Leon the clip. It had already been downloaded 57 times, from employees, then 83, then 206. It was being shared, not because it was part of a campaign, because it was real. There's a difference between a fire that dies out and one that burns underground. The Monday after Leon's livestream message, the corporate floor looked the same on the surface. Same lobby scent, same acrylic nameplates, same curated hallway art. But something had shifted, a kind of ripple. People lingered in break rooms longer. Managers paused before they spoke. Janitorial staff were greeted by name. Security guards found donuts left on their stations. It wasn't orchestrated. It was human. But above the 18th floor, where the air changed and the windows wrapped around meetings like mirrors, the ripple felt more like a threat. Corporate communications scrambled first. They drafted an email to the entire company titled, "Thank you for engaging in our cultural evolution." It tried to reframe Leon's message as part of an internal storytelling initiative long in motion. It referenced vague, employee-led spotlights and carefully omitted his name. But it was too late, because by that point, the clip had left the building. A producer from WBEZ Public Radio Chicago reached out 2 days later. A woman named Elise. Calm, sharp, curious. She'd seen the clip posted by her cousin, who worked in tech sales, and asked if Leon would sit for a recorded interview. "I don't need a spotlight," Leon said, holding the phone to his ear. "On his back porch." "I'm not offering a spotlight," Elise replied. "I'm offering a microphone. You've already lit the fire. Let people see where it leads." He was quiet for a long beat. Then, "I'll come, but only if the custodian..." "Teams invited too, they got their own stories." Elise smiled through the phone. "We'll make room." Back in the office, the undercurrent grew louder. An anonymous employee Slack channel titled "Heard at Elevate" exploded in activity. Testimonies poured in from staff across departments. "I worked here 5 years before anyone from C-suite looked me in the eye." Leon's speech reminded me why I took this job in the first place. Not for perks, for purpose. When leadership said, "We hear you," but still cut overnight hours, that was the real message. By Friday, the executive team requested a meeting with Leon. Not a private one, a public forum. They were getting pressure from outside media, board members, even shareholders, all asking the same question. What exactly is your company culture? And who gets to define it? Bradford met with Leon beforehand. For once, no assistants, no blazer. Just a man with his elbows on the table, tired lines around his eyes. "You caused a hell of a stir," he said, not unkindly. Leon tilted his head. "You said you wanted truth in the room." "I did. I do." Bradford exhaled. but the board wants containment, and I can't hold back the tide if I'm seen as losing control. Leon nodded slowly. Then maybe stop trying to control it. Maybe start leading it. Bradford looked at him for a long time, not as a CEO, but as a man who had forgotten something essential. That night, as the city lit up in a wash of orange and steel blue, Leon sat again with his notebook. He wrote, "Truth doesn't ask for permission. It asks for courage. And when it speaks, leaders listen or they fall." Then he closed it, slipped it into his coat, and laid out the same shoes he'd worn when this all began. The black-soled orthopedic ones that had walked 10,000 silent halls. Tomorrow he would walk into a different kind of room, not to clean it, but to change it. The forum wasn't held in the usual auditorium, too polished, too rehearsed. Instead, by request, Leon's request, it was moved to the main employee commons, a high-ceilinged multi-purpose floor where cafeteria booths and long tables bled into open lounges, a place where everyone from night crew to finance leads passed through at least once a day. The chairs were folding. The mic stand wobbled slightly. There were no stage lights, just people, lots of them, more than anyone expected. Interns in branded hoodies, programmers with tired eyes, admins in low heels, techs in jumpsuits, janitors in grey polos, and near the edges, a few executives in tailored navy looking very out of place without the podium. Maria sat near the front. So did Elise from the radio station, small recorder in hand, and standing quietly near the entrance, arms folded across a faded navy jacket, was a man Leon hadn't seen in years. It was Tony Green, former lead custodian, retired 4 years ago after his benefits were restructured. Leon had trained under him once, learned how to fix an elevator panel with a rubber band and a screwdriver, learned how to listen with your eyes, learned to stay silent until silence meant erasure. Tony nodded as Leon caught his eye, then tipped his chin like, "It's your turn now, son." The mic screeched once, then settled. Leon stepped up slowly, not in a blazer, not in his old uniform, just a collared shirt and the same badge he'd always worn. He looked out across the crowd, then exhaled, "Thank you for showing up. A month ago I stood on a stage because someone forgot to take my name off a list. Now I'm here because you remembered I was on it. I'm not here to blame. I'm here to remind leadership that real culture isn't built with emails or ice cream socials. It's built with dignity. Remind co-workers that kindness isn't a policy, it's a practice. And remind this building that you don't need a C-suite to lead. You need eyes that see, ears that hear, and a backbone that doesn't bow just because someone else wears cufflinks." Silence, then slowly applause, but not just polite this time. It rolled, deep and pulsing. Someone stood, then another, then half the room, and just as Leon began to step back, someone else raised their hand. A woman in a blue apron, kitchen staff, early 50s, hair tied back in a net. She didn't wait for the mic. "You know how long it's been since someone like us was allowed to speak in a room like this?" she said, voice cracking. "I've worked here 18 years, never once been asked how. I'm doing." A few heads turned, but no one interrupted. "Today," she said, "I feel like someone saw me." Leon bowed his head. The next hand came from an unlikely place. Quinn, facilities director, slick shirt, silver watch. He looked stiff, like someone forcing himself through the right motions, but his voice, when it came, was unsure in a way that almost sounded human. I want to apologize," he said, glancing at Leon. "I nominated you for the conference as a checkbox. That's the truth." He paused. "But watching what you did with it showed me how small my thinking was, and how many people I've ignored in this building." A few murmurs rippled through the back. One of Quinn's own assistants blinked like they'd just seen a ghost speak. Leon nodded, slowly. "Takes more strength to own it than to fake it," he said. By the time the forum ended, sign-up sheets for an internal voice council had been filled. A new rotating slot for non-management speakers was confirmed for all quarterly meetings, and 2 janitors, a cafeteria worker, and a mailroom clerk were added to the Culture and Ethics Task Force. As the crowd dispersed, Elise approached Leon. "You know your clip hit 80,000 views," she asked. "National syndicates are asking to pick it up." Leon just smiled. "I didn't say it for them. I said it for the folks who've been walking these floors in silence." Then he turned and found Tony standing by the back door waiting. They walked out together into the crisp evening light, 2 men who once pushed brooms in empty halls, now walking shoulder to shoulder, no keys, no mop buckets, just quiet pride. 2 weeks later, the letter came in a plain manila envelope. No branding, just a return address from Washington, D.C. Leon sat at his kitchen table and opened it slowly, unfolding the thick paper. The seal at the top was from the Department of Labor. Inside, a short formal message. "You are cordially invited to serve as a panelist on the National Workplace Equity Council. Your voice represents the American workforce with a clarity and moral weight that transcends title. We believe your perspective can help shape policies for generations." Below it, a date, a round table in D.C. 3 weeks away. Leon stared at it for a long moment. Then he reached for his notebook, the one nearly filled now, and flipped to a blank page. He wrote, "Dignity is not given. It is remembered and shared until it cannot be erased." Back at the office, things had shifted, not in slogans but in tone. The janitorial break room got new furniture. Night shift workers were formally invited to planning meetings. Bradford started walking the floors unannounced, asking names, shaking hands, taking notes without assistance. Not everyone bought into the change at first, but then came the moment that made it real. A senior VP, one who hadn't even looked at Leon during his first speech, resigned quietly after the Voice Council flagged a pattern of silent discrimination in her team. She wasn't replaced by another executive. She was replaced by a former call center supervisor with a stutter and a notebook full of ideas. On Leon's last official night before leaving for D.C., Maria brought him a gift. It was wrapped in butcher paper, no bow. Inside, a small wooden nameplate engraved with simple words, "Leon Dorsey, silent steward, reluctant leader. The reason we changed." He didn't say anything, just ran his thumb over the carving like it was something holy, then hugged her, the first time in all their years. 3 weeks later, Leon walked through the marbled halls of a federal building in Washington. He wore the same shoes, the same blazer, a new badge. The man next to him, a researcher from MIT, asked if it was Leon's first time on a national council. Leon smiled. "No," he said. "Just the first time I get to speak in a room where no one throws out what I say after." They entered the chamber together, and as he stepped into the circle of voices shaping the future of American work, he didn't think about being a janitor. He thought about being a witness. Epilogue. A year later, the downtown Chicago headquarters held a rededication. One of its lounges, once simply named Community Commons, had been quietly renamed. No banners, no PR, just a brushed steel plaque by the door, the Leon Dorsey Commons. Leadership is how you show up when no one's watching. Underneath the plaque, a small shelf, always stocked with blank notebooks, free for any employee who had something to say and was ready to be heard.